Betsy Hawk is with the Ohio Department of Education, has been involved with this. She has kindly consented to step in and fill you in on a little of what they do and how they work, and some other details about the Department of Education that would be very relevant to our juvenile justice work. So thank you, Betsy, for standing in at the last minute.
I am the Justice Involved Youth Coordinator for the Ohio Department of Education. We've got our juvenile justice students under our umbrella, as well as our students in foster care. The overall umbrella is actually the court-involved youth. A lot of districts don't realize what happens in secure settings when it comes to education and vice versa. In fact, a lot of folks don't realize that there are 5 different ways that education can take place in secure settings in the state of Ohio. One is, if applicable, chartered non-public schools can operate within those facilities. Secondly, they can arrange with the school district responsible for payment for education to take place with that student. They can also contract with the Educational Service Center to educate that student, and they can also contract with the educational district or school district in which the facility is located. And then finally, they can use an online platform to educate those students. When you think about a typical classroom in a secure setting, what you have to understand is that it can vary in age ranges, anything from, on average, 12 years old all the way up to 21. So differentiated learning is definitely something that takes place in those environments. They might have to utilize an online platform as well as pencil and paper. They're also trying to navigate safety and security issues at all times, and population that's in flux consistently. So my job is to help the districts, the local districts, understand the population that they are serving, that are justice involved, and also help the secure settings understand the education requirement that they have to fulfill. Part of why I'm here is because of the Every Student Succeeds Act, which came into play in 2016, which made it mandatory that each state education agency had somebody that could help with the supports that were needed for students as they transition to and from secure settings back into their home district. A lot of districts don't understand that they must take those students back. So we help with those supports. We're coming up with best practices. We have a group of Ohio 8 and urban school districts together that meets bi-monthly, and those folks can come together and discuss best practices, how they welcome some of the 1,000 plus students that are justice involved in the state of Ohio. The other thing is, we at the Ohio Department of Education, we have a system called ACMIC, in which we can track different characteristics of students. One of the populations that we track is justice involved students, because we want to get a better idea of how many students are justice involved and where our supports could best be utilized. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. I'm part of the vulnerable youth team. So we've got our military students as students of military adults. We also have our migrant and English learner students in our umbrella, our homeless students experiencing homelessness, and court involved, so the justice and the foster students. There's a lot of overlap. Up to 80% of our students that are in secure settings have a mental health need. Anywhere from 13 to 80%, depending on which statistics you look at, can also have some sort of special education need. So we have a lot of work with our Office of Exceptional Children, which provides supports for our students that might have some sort of special education requirement. Secure settings tend to be places in which there is a lot going on, and education isn't always necessarily at the forefront of what needs to take place first and foremost when we receive a kid in one of those settings. So one of the things that we have been able to do is to start to get groups together to discuss best practices, groups that wouldn't typically have the time or means necessarily to focus on education. And so we've been going around gathering, I've been going around gathering information from the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. They operate the central school system amongst all of their adult facilities. We've been working with our colleagues at DYS. We also have been starting to work with detention centers, which there are 33 detention centers throughout the state of Ohio. So there are 33 different areas in this state that are operating 33 different ways of education, and trying to come up with some sort of cohesive, coherent plan and level of supports is something that we at ODE have been charged with doing, and we are working pretty diligently to do. One of the things that we have discovered as a best practice, which shouldn't be rocket science, but is new to some folks, is coming up with graduation plans. A lot of our kids that are justice involved have no idea where they're at as far as in their progress to achieving graduation or the equivalent of graduation. So we've been working with our detention centers to come up with just a standard sort of tracker so that the students in their care can understand where they're at, how much further they have to go, and then maybe even plan for what they want to do beyond graduation. We've got supports with Ohio Means Jobs. We've got various postgraduate supports even at ODE that we can offer these high-risk students. Another thing that we have been working with as far as best practice, and what Wayne could have talked about today had he been here, is that the School of One, which operates within the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, is actually pretty unique. The kids that are in that secure setting at the detention facility get educated by the School of One staff, which those staff are actually employees of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. When those students leave that detention center, instead of going directly back into their home school within the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, they might go to a different school, but still operate with those School of One teachers within that different setting. So there's continuity of care that doesn't necessarily take place in other facilities or secure settings throughout the state of Ohio. And they've had much success because those kids have not had to disrupt the learning that they had already been able to start while they were in that secure setting. The other thing is because the Cleveland Metropolitan School District is the School of One and vice versa, there's not a huge issue with transcripts transferring credits, things that other kids in other secure settings typically struggle with. So we are working on ways that we can help kind of take the good parts that are happening in some of these secure settings and let these other folks know about it, because it doesn't cost any money to replicate, and if anything, it's going to save with the retention of these students. We know that the vast majority of our students that leave secure care do not re-enroll back in school, and so we want to make sure that we provide the supports that we possibly can, and best practices to help change that narrative. Are there any questions? Anybody want to know about my week off? It was good. I got a good tan. Thank you all.